Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and LEGO is about to release their very first DC-themed modular building. That's right, Arkham Asylum is here, and today we are going to jump into an in-depth, hands-on early review of everything related to the new Arkham Asylum. The figures, the interior, the exterior, and how does it stack up against some of the other superhero modular buildings. Stay tuned, because I'll also be doing a video on installing the new Arkham in my modular city as well, separately from this, but as far as right now, let's go ahead and jump into our early look at the new Arkham Asylum. Alright, this is the modular LEGO Arkham Asylum. It will retail for $300 when it releases in September of this year, and it comes with 2,953 pieces plus 16 minifigures, many of which are brand new for this set. It is our very first DC modular building, and it is very, very interesting. First of all, I just love the amount of personality this set has. It is one of the most unique layouts for a modular building, in it being an inverse corner, which honestly does not make it very fun to try to slot into a city. Stay tuned for my video tomorrow where I try and arguably fail at integrating this successfully into my existing modular LEGO city, but I honestly think that that style of character and personality for the building really works well for Arkham. It is intended to kind of feel like its own thing, a little bit isolated from the rest of a city, and have its own unique blend of architecture, blending in different eras of Batman, LEGO Batman, all sorts of movie influences as well, into one full set. Let's dive in right now. Alright, let's take a closer look at Arkham Asylum. Of course, there is really only one side build, which is this van here. The van itself is initially something I kind of wrote off as being a little bit too simplistic for a modular set, but honestly, after building it, it's grown on me a lot more. There are surprisingly complex building techniques used for studs in the side detail on the front of the van here, where you can see you've got just little bits and pieces of plates to allow you to have this continuous sand blue stripe throughout the van, as well as the lights actually being positioned in the right ways, which is actually a really clever way to design it. The top of the van has a reference to the original LEGO Arkham Asylum set from the first wave of LEGO Batman, of course set number 7785, and I personally have a lot of fond memories of building that when it came out. It was one of my LEGO sets that I had back then when I was a kid, so it was actually really cool to kind of call back to that. Unfortunately, the one major issue I do have with the van is that the sticker quality is remarkably poor. And for whatever reason, and I haven't really noticed it being that big of a deal before, but the stickers on this van are so noticeably not the right shade of white that it really stands out. This is not necessarily a problem that is just present in this set alone. I think most white stickers are like it, but it's really exacerbated here because the van itself is basically all white, so when you have a sticker that kind of breaks up the momentum of the white bricks, it really just tends to stand out, and even then, some details that they've added, like these little scuffs on the side of the van, just look very clearly like stickers and not like they're just parts of the van itself that are beat up. So that's a bit unfortunate to me. I'm really not a fan of the way the stickers look on this build. Don't really know of a way they could have honestly fixed that without like changing the way they make white stickers, but that's just something I wanted to point out. You can remove the panels on the top here, so you can see there are little ingots which allow you to use your fingers to remove it, some stun or tranquilizer guns on the back of the seats there, and of course you can open up the back doors of the van. And inside, you can see that there is a prisoner containment bed, so if somebody's getting a little too unruly, you can strap them to the bed. But funnily enough, a lot of these set images show that the Joker has commandeered this truck, and he's actually strapped one of the guards to the back instead, which I think is a funny detail. Otherwise, there's not much else to say about it. It is nice to get a little van for Arkham. I think it kind of makes sense that you have some sort of a prisoner transport, but other than the front of the van itself being actually pretty clever in the way it's built, this one doesn't really have that much to offer for me, so we can move on to the main build itself. Now, I'm going to be taking a closer look at every single one of the minifigures separately, so actually what we're going to do is go ahead and remove all the figures. I wanted to actually start with all of them on, though, because I wanted to point out that there are so many different things that you can do with the set to pose the minifigures around it. In fact, the set itself comes with a number of extra transparent pieces when you're done building, so you literally can pose them anywhere there are studs or axle holes or even places to clip figures onto around the building, of which there's actually quite a lot. Obviously, you can see Batman and Robin here have these clips that you can attach to the back of their feet to make it look like they are leaping into action, but that's not all. If you go over here, you've got a little piece where poison ivy is stuck into the side of the wall, and of course this was just a little extra element that you could use to pose the figures up. The penguin is hovering down over here, where you can see that he actually is plugged in via an axle, and all of these are more or less the official placements for where they actually showcase these figures in the instructions. Some of the figures are just placed all around, just kind of trying to escape the building, but you do have some spots where of course you've got like Batwing hanging off the side here. You can just go ahead and remove this posing piece, and what's really cool is that you even have Catwoman kind of stuck onto the back there as well. So they really are trying to make the most of all of these different figure posing platforms, which is something I really appreciate. Of course, there's an area for the Penguins and Joker and Harley to escape out of the front of Arkham itself, but overall, with all of the figures removed, this is what it looks like. Again, it does include a ton of extra transparent pieces if you want to pose your own, and because of that, they've included all these different attachment pieces around the model, which initially on some superhero buildings, I feel like it can be a little distracting, it just doesn't look quite right, but on a building like Arkham, which is kind of supposed to be a little dilapidated, it's pretty run down, the brickwork is breaking, there are little cracks in the fence, I think it actually makes a lot of sense for there to be random axle holes and stud holes sticking out of the side of the building, because it just kind of looks like weather damage or wear and tear. Now, I'm going to start off with the exterior of the building first as we jump into the review of the actual building itself, and then we'll take a look at the interior because there's actually quite a lot going on here. On the back side, you can see a number of different posters, and each of these do correspond to different wanted cells on the inside. So you've got a reference to voting for Harvey Dent, where of course half his face is torn off, some Joker graffiti on the side there, and then you even have a really nice Easter egg that says Visit Metropolis. Could this be a hint towards a future modular building featuring Superman and the Daily Planet? I sure hope so. I really don't know if LEGO would do it, but with the success of the movie, I honestly think anything is possible. There's a couple of Wayne scratch cards which are pretty funny, and then of course a reference saying hello there with a cat paw print. Moving on to the back here, you have some fun stickers like saying not a revolving door and then unrestricted access, where the Riddler seems to have had some fun graffitiing up that area, and all around you've got like little bits and pieces of like boarded up areas of the windows. I think one of my favorite details of these sticker Easter eggs on the back side of the model here has got to be the Harley reference over here, which is very interesting for LEGO to actually include and reference in an official set. I think it's really cute, and given that that relationship has been more permeating throughout like the Harley Quinn animated show as well as in the comics and becoming a lot more popular, it makes sense that they would actually partner them up in this set. Of course, you do have a reference to the Penguin over here as well, which I don't really know what the Penguin was cooking there. I mean, I guess he just kind of wanted to put the graffiti of his own face or logo on the side of the building. Don't know why he'd really do that, but you know, let the Penguin cook. Oz Cobb has many reasons for what he does, and some of those reasons are unknown to me. There is a bit of graffiti back here with the Riddler's question marks, and of course a little area for ice and snow, and that's going to be a little bit more relevant when of course you see the minifigures where perhaps Mr. Freeze has swung by here and managed to make some sort of an escape using the snow on the back of the building there. Now, looking at the building as a whole, I actually really like that they managed to include just bits and pieces of the walls that are literally smashed and broken open. Thankfully, they are pretty much just built out of standard parts, so unlike something like the Daily Bugle, which did have part of it be exploding, but also included all of the bricks to actually put it back together, they don't include the standard bricks to plug the holes in the walls. You have to do that with parts in your own collection, but honestly, it doesn't really bother me that much. I know some people have said online like, oh, LEGO is trying to save money by doing stuff like this, and I actually don't think so. In fact, it took way more specialized pieces to have these like random jagged holes in the walls than it would have been to just cover it all up with brick. I actually think this added more to the parts budget, but I also think that it adds a lot more to the asylum itself. It really feels like the kind of place that would have a regular supervillain breakout, which of course is, as we now know, true in the DCU too. Of course, this is a modular building. It's meant to fit with the other modular buildings, and I really hope this means we'll be getting more DC modulars. You've got 2 pins on the side here and 2 pinholes there, and of course you can just swap out the pins should you please, but I certainly will be adding this to my modular city. Very excited to put out a video on that, and as we rotate this around, you can even see some more holes here, like a spoon. Someone is carving out their escape, and this actually does lead into one of the cells. And then, of course, you've got all sorts of different random Easter eggs, like some specialized Easter eggs inside this crate. I actually think now's a good time as any to actually take a look at the crate in here and take a look at some of the Easter eggs within. I'm going to go ahead and remove that just so we can get a nice up-close look at what's inside here, and this might be one of my favorite Easter eggs in the entire set. You see, of course, there is a lot of influence with this set, and of course with LEGO Batman as a whole, focused around the original LEGO Batman video game, which I think made a lot of people fall in love with LEGO Batman. And so to pay homage to that game, they've included a number of studs from that game. You've got like the blue studs, the silver studs, the gold studs, and the ever-valuable purple studs. I feel very rich right now holding this in my hand inside the dumpster, which I don't even remember seeing advertised, but I thought was super cool. But that's not all. Inside is actually a comic book cover of one of the original Batman covers, number 9 here, showcasing Batman and Robin. It is one of the most iconic images associated with Batman, and that's not the only really cool Batman Easter egg in this set, but it's one that I think is super, super special. I love how they also kind of use the 1960s inspired version of like the Adam West style of Batman outfit here, because of course that kind of harkens back to that time, and I would love to get that Robin as a minifigure, especially with that crazy hair he's got going on. But super cool to get this as an actual comic cover. Some of the Marvel modulars have done stuff like this before, and I really appreciate it. There's also another piece inside there, and that will actually help with the functionality of some of the items in the set, so we'll take a look at that one in a little bit. Of course, once we actually close up the dumpster and put all of the wanton studs inside, you may also notice that this dumpster has a little bit of a play feature as well, but this play feature will not be evident until we actually go inside the building. So I'm going to just stick this right back where it belongs, and then you might notice that I wonder what pulling this out does and pulling this box out does, and well, we're about to find out as we take a look at the interior. Moving backwards to the front of the set though, you might notice just a little bit more, just some nice Easter eggs here. One of the minifigures I really wish they included in the set, but they didn't actually, was Clayface. However, there are many references to Clayface in the set, and actually, the entire set is built around the idea or notion that Clayface has already previously escaped prior to you building the set. There is a wanted poster of Clayface kind of on the floor, like an inmate poster on the floor inside. There's a little bit of clay just kind of oozing out of the pipe here, suggesting he's made his way out through the pipes, and of course, there's even a picture of him inside the computer monitor showing him as missing. So I really, really hope that, given that we are rumored to be getting a few more DC sets later in January of next year, that Clayface will actually be a part of those, especially with his new relevance with the upcoming DCU movie. That would be really nice to see. Over here, you have a nice sign saying hitchhikers may be supervillains. Smile, you're on camera with the Joker smile. And then speaking of the Joker, you've got his iconic laughs up there on the water tower up at the top, and then just another reference to Harley as a sticker on the roof of the building here. The statue itself is technically an exclusive minifigure with a specialized headprint, which I think is really cool. They're utilizing a gray recolor of the eagle wings that they introduced for the LEGO D&D CMF series, which is very nice to see that recolored, and you can choose to turn the statue's head around if you just want a more normal expression right there. But of course, this is Arkham Asylum after all, so somebody, probably the Joker, has gone crazy with the overall graffiti around the statue's face itself, which I think is totally perfect and really just a nice touch that goes above and beyond to make this set feel special. Moving onwards to the front gate here, you can see that they're utilizing the roller coaster element, which I think is quite nice. These signs were a little annoying to line up, actually. It wasn't my favorite part of the build there. It kind of took me a little bit to fiddle around with adjusting them to be just getting the words on the right size there, but when they're finished, they look pretty good. It says Arkham Asylum, and of course the gate can swing open and shut, just like so. I also love the usage of the gargoyle element introduced for the LEGO Wednesday Netflix series. I feel like that's a really clever element to use for Batman-related builds, and I'm very happy they did that. Another really nice parts usage you can see all throughout the set are the usage of the brand new cover light elements. This was introduced as part of the LEGO Friends portfolio earlier this year in bright colors to represent like gumdrops or jelly drops from a candy store, but here they're used as security cameras in the trans black color, which I think looks absolutely perfect. These are all over the set and also all over the inside of the interior as well. Not necessarily that the security cameras are really going to do any help because villains break out of here on the regular, but I think it is a really nice touch and one element of the set that just looks really good. Moving over to the side here, you've got a little splash of color on the side, and I think this was very smart to break up the very monotonous, like, light gray, dark gray, brown of the building, which could have seemed a little bit maybe uninteresting or a little bit too dark, but you have this very bright splash of green because, of course, Poison Ivy is either growing plants or trying to break out of her cell with plants, no matter what the purpose of those are. But now I think it's time to take a look at the interior, and I'm actually going to start off with this side because there are a couple of ways you can access the interior in this model, and it's not quite as intuitive as your standard modular building. First off, you'll see these very handy little gaps in all of the prison cells back here, and most of the building is actually prison cells. This is probably the closest we'll ever get to a modular Lego jail, because it's kind of a dark concept, but it works perfectly for the Batman mythos, and here you can see all the different character jail cells, and of course, that function I mentioned earlier, you can pull out the box here as well as the electrical kind of box up at the top, and then you can see these cell doors slide open all at once. It's a very simple feature and honestly one that we've seen a million times before in a ton of other Lego sets and even some smaller versions of Arkham Asylum, but I think it works pretty well, you know? It's a good way to open up all the cell doors at once. Unfortunately, there is no way to open up individual cell doors, so if you want to just remove like one prisoner in particular, you can't really do that, but I still think it is a nice touch to be able to actually remove the different characters. So obviously, somebody has escaped their cell here by carving out a tunnel with a spoon. Doesn't really necessarily say which prisoner that was, but maybe just some resourceful prisoner has made their way out, and all the beds can actually flip upwards. There's nothing really underneath any of the beds, but you do have that extra functionality in case you want the prison to feel more like a standard room, and this one over here doesn't even have a bed, you just have a couple of orange tiles right there. Poison Ivy's room, on the other hand, doesn't have a bed, but it's completely overgrown with vines where you can see some plants and vines on the inside, which I think is a nice touch. They've even recolored the floor to make it look like moss has grown all over the floor, which is actually a really cool detail. Of course, you do have the extra functionality to just lift off the entire roof section in general, so with that removed, you get access to a little bit of the other parts of the interior here, but I actually kind of want to start with the ground floor first and work our way up. So let's go ahead and reinstall all of the back panels here. It's super simple to do so, and I do like that they included just a little bit of a gap to allow you to really access the prisoner cell rooms, because obviously while they could have just easily had you place the prisoner up at the top there, one would argue that that's not enough space to actually pose a minifigure inside the prison cell itself, so they came up with this nice solution. Taking off this section right here, you can see that you have access to the ground floor. And this is where there is most detail. I would say that the ground floor has the most very different things that you can do with it. I'm going to start off by taking a look at the bottom section right here, which is kind of an office section for the security guards. On the screen there, you can see a place where they can monitor the criminals. One of them, Joker, is right up there on the camera. You can see Killer Croc in the lunchroom, Bane lifting weights in the gym, and then just kind of a top-down view as well. You've got a really nice reference to a classic Batman Returns cover here with the Gotham City newspaper, and yes, that is that iconic Batman pose. Very cool to see that being recreated from the comics. There's a button there that says open all cell doors, which I guess is reliant and actually consistent with the way the set itself works. And then of course there is a hint towards a missing spoon, which of course the prisoner is used to escape. Stand-up comedy with Mr. J, there is an escape hatch over here, a door code, as well as some nice chemical equations, which actually are other references to DC lore. Down here, you can see a glow-in-the-dark radium printed tile. This was actually introduced in the LEGO Ideas STEM set, but I actually think it works really well here, just some sort of like toxic material, and then of course just some paperwork down on the floor. There is a maximum security door here, which actually swings open, and you can see kind of an isolation chamber there. Not really sure particularly which criminal is supposed to reside in this particular cell, but you can see it's very, very serious where they don't even have a window, they're not kept in Gen Pop like the other ones. No, this one is the maximum security cell, so you can kind of use your imagination and choose whatever criminal you want to put in there. Over here, you can see that there is a height chart as well as a bit of a reference in there to a shark fin. Not really sure if that's referencing King Shark or some other DC character, but I think it is a nice one nonetheless. And of course, you can move over here where you can see that mysteriously, the Clayface prisoner badge is just on the floor there. It is coated in clay, but I wonder, where could Clayface be? That's the question that people have been asking themselves and LEGO for years and years, because we haven't gotten a Clayface minifigure yet, as I mentioned, even though he is referenced on the monitor there, which is really nice to see. And again, really hope that's a hint towards a future figure. Moving on to this side of the building, again, it is a little bit cramped in here, but I do actually like that they are able to use the interior to maximum space. You can see here that there are like no coins, umbrellas, playing cards, or coolers beyond this point, where the Joker is clearly defaced that sign, another security camera there to watch the inmates, and an actual ladder to get up to the next floor. So I appreciate that, yeah, while they didn't actually have the room to build in stairs into this building, they did try to actually make the mobility make sense within the building itself, by having a ladder so you can access some of the upper floor jail cells. And again, you can open and shut all the doors like so. But now let's move on to the next floor. One of the cooler details of the second floor to me is that you actually can see the bottom floor. It almost makes it look like these cells are on an elevated railing and then you can take the ladders up. I think that's a really clever idea, and it kind of reminds me of the Lego Batman movie in universe, like the version of Arkham in the movie, where you had all these rows and rows of jail cells, and of course you could kind of have these balconies you could look over. I think that's a really nice touch, and I'm kind of surprised they were able to pull it off with like 4 studs worth of room. Genuinely, I'm very impressed by how much they were able to do with the space they actually had to work with. Moving on to this other area here, there's a couple of Easter eggs on the desk. Again, it's a little hard to see in there, and that is the unfortunate thing. Like, a lot of these details, you have a lot of enjoyment out of them when you build it yourself, but then when it's fully built, because the space is so cramped, it is really hard to even just get minifigures or your fingers in there to see. Specifically, the Easter eggs are for the Eraser, another iconic Batman villain. Maybe iconic isn't the right word. Another one of Batman's coterie of criminals in there, where you can see his giant eraser head. There is a small owl hinting at the Court of Owls right there, which is a nice new mold introduced for the Lego Marvel CMF Series 2, actually, with Hawkeye, and then a red cup as well. Right here you can see a menu with laughing fish soup, chicken legs, and snow cones. Of course, those all kind of relate to villains. You have Dr. Hugo Strange's doctorate on there. Really wish we got Hugo Strange as a minifigure in this set too. I think that would have been really cool. And then of course, you can see the inside of the, I guess this is like the therapy office or whatever it is, where it's kind of funny where you have like a sign that says Employee of the Month with Dr. Harleen Quinzel. Clearly they just haven't taken it down because it's kind of hung askew. And of course, Most Wanted being Harley Quinn. On the inside here, you have some tape for the actual detectives to kind of listen to audio recordings, and in there you can see a hint towards Killer Croc in these sewers, and maybe he was the one who used the spoon to escape. You also have Two-Face's coin in there, and that is a glaring omission when it comes to the minifigures of the set. No Two-Face for some reason, but his coin is present. Thankfully, they do actually make it a little bit easy to access the security chamber over here, which is kind of a watchtower for the guards. And of course, you can even pretend that there was some explosion that actually caused this part of the building to get demolished. So if you want to just move this somewhere else and just kind of have this be off to the side, you can actually pretend that this is some place for the criminals to escape from. So I actually like how that's how they made the wall there. On the inside of the security chamber over here, you've got a little microphone to make announcements, a spilled radioactive coffee mug, a red panic button, and of course, the symbol of Batman, in case you need to call in some vengeance for help. Moving on from that, you can see that this is pretty much the entirety of the building, and that is one of my bigger complaints about the way the set is displayed and the way it's built. I actually ended up liking this a little bit more than the X-Men Mansion, but if you remember, one of the biggest problems I had with the X-Men Mansion was it was way too narrow. The rooms were really small, and I felt like it was really hard to pose up minifigures inside the space. And unfortunately, as cool as this space is, I feel like so many details get lost in the shuffle because it is so hard to even just get your fingers inside of here. It is nearly impossible to do so. Even little details like the Harley Quinn, and of course it's crossed out and it now says Harleen Quinzel, psychologist there, it's just so hard to even see details like that because it is just so narrow. I don't know how I would even reasonably get any minifigures in this walking space over here because it is just not a lot of space they're giving you. I think that there were some trade-offs in getting the set to land at the price point. Obviously, that means a reduced piece count, and also trying to get this kind of facade of the building set up where you have a really interesting kind of inner corner here, which I think looks cool, like having a large front gate and an inner corner. Like, this looks really cool, but the side effect is that when you look at it from the top down, you have such a cramped amount of space in here, there's really not much you can do with the model. And even previous playscale versions of Arkham Asylum that aren't modular buildings have accomplished more with less parts and less space because, again, this is a modular building, meaning everything had to be closed up on the back. Do I think that LEGO should have absolutely just made this part of the modular building just extend outwards and be part of that building? Yes, I don't really think we necessarily needed this particular play feature. Like, it is nice to have, don't get me wrong, and I'm not complaining we have it, but I would absolutely have traded that play feature if there was just a way for them to fill in this back corner. I think that would have bought us a lot more space. Maybe some more jail cells, or maybe extend this room. There could have been so much more they could have done with this area, and it feels to me like this right here for the back corner, that is absolutely a budget thing. I mean, at least on the front, you could argue that yes, this actually looks really cool aesthetically speaking, having it be mounted at an angle, having this be kind of an inner corner building, which isn't really something we've seen a lot from the modular lineup. The only other one that comes to mind is the corner garage, I believe it was called, or kind of that garage vehicle repair bay. But other than that one, we haven't really seen a building quite like this one. So I do like it for what it is. I think it is very, very unique in the way it's been designed, but as far as the back goes, they absolutely could have filled in that back corner. You could make the argument that for the front one, like, yes, to preserve the aesthetics, they had to cut out this much space from the standard modular building footprint, but I don't know, that argument doesn't really work for the back. And so, with that, I feel like I have showcased everything there is to look at when it comes to this particular set. A lot of pros and a lot of cons. I love the interior, I love a lot of the detailing, but it does feel super, super cramped. I think, again, I do like it a little better than the previous superhero modular, which was the X Mansion, just because it just feels more alive and unique to me. There's just more things you can do with it, and it definitely feels just more interesting, I would say, than the standard X Mansion did. That was kind of just a rectangular building. This one has some interesting geography going on, there's some interesting geometry going on, interesting shapes, as well as the way they actually did the angles here. It is built in a very clever manner, and that's something I really appreciate when building a modular building like this. But overall, it does feel very cramped inside, and of course, the big question is, does it justify its value? But before we get into that and wrap up my final thoughts on this building, let's take a quick look at every single minifigure included in the set. Batman here makes a return from his original appearance in a more comics-accurate outfit that debuted earlier this year, but the main difference is that he does have a specialized flowing cape. LEGO did introduce these flowing cape elements for the 2020 Batman offerings, but it's really cool to actually see them back, especially in brand new colors. I honestly am kind of surprised LEGO decided to bring back these types of cuts of capes, because I feel like those were very specific to what LEGO was doing with the Batman theme back a few years ago, but it is really cool and fits the set very well to have him be perched atop a rooftop and actually have the cape be flowing behind him. I think that is a very cool look. Now, Batman is of course armed with a batarang, and he does have that dual molded cowl in white and black, plus the Shang-Chi or just kind of generic angry head underneath, which I think works okay for the character, but I do miss the days of like the LEGO Batman movie where he did have that molded belt, and that is still in production, so I don't really know why they don't give it to the modern day versions. Next up, we have Kate Kane, aka Batwoman. This is our second Batwoman minifigure, but it is pretty similar to the first one that we did get originally. They did use the same mold for the cowl, which they used in the 2018 and 2019 version of the figure, which is pretty interesting because I would have imagined that that mold would have been discontinued by this point, but maybe they decided to resurrect it. They have introduced the specialized dual color cape with red and black, which I think looks really good on the character. It is the same cut of those specialized flowing capes that they were using back in like 2019, 2020, but I think it is just a very nice look for the build itself. Now, Kate Kane does have a fully printed up torso. This is a brand new torso compared to her previous appearance, although it is remarkably similar. I would say that the detailing on the torso is super, super close to that original figure. Robin, on the other hand, is inspired by a specific comics outfit, and he does have a brand new cut of cape. It's kind of meant to look like it's flowing in the wind similar to the other characters, but this one is dual colored with yellow and black, which looks really good. For whatever reason, LEGO kind of went all out with the capes on the Bat family in this set, which is super cool. He does have the mid-legs to signify that he is a teenager and a little bit younger than the rest of the characters, and this torso is pretty different compared to a lot of other Robin designs we've gotten over the years, which is something I do appreciate. You do have the R symbol on there and a little bit of a hint of green on the belt, but predominantly the torso is dark gray, and for the head you have a scared expression and a cocky smile, which I think fits the character quite well. Moving on to the next minifigure here, we have our final member of the Bat family, and strange enough, they have decided to include Batwing for the first time in LEGO form in this set. Should they have included a more iconic or prominent member of the Bat fam like Batgirl instead, if you wanted to include a full roster of characters in this lineup? Maybe, but honestly, I'm actually kind of happy we finally get Luke Fox as a minifigure. I think his suit is really cool. The entire minifigure is gunmetal gray, and it's easily one of my favorite figures in the entire set. They're utilizing the dual molded gunmetal gray with blue eye bat cowl, which we got in the Batman Forever set, but I think it just looks so good on this suit in particular. It's kind of like a Batman-inspired Iron Man sort of suit, which I think is super cool, and obviously Batwing has a long history in the comics as well, so I think it's finally time for Luke Fox to get a time to shine in the LEGO portfolio, especially because we've gotten so many other like Batgirls and like Jason Todd's Robins and whatever before, or even Nightwings, so I'm actually pretty happy they chose to include a different character here. Moving on to the villains though, because of course the set is villain focused, we have the Joker. Now for this set they introduced a brand new torso and leg print element for the Arkham Asylum inmates, and some of the villains have it, some of them don't. Obviously part of this was a way to cut down on budget, but I actually do like that they did manage to print the legs here. If you're going to include minifigures in the same exact outfit multiple times in the set, at least have the legs be printed. I do appreciate that. Joker himself is using the same headpiece we've seen him use in pretty recent LEGO history, so nothing super new there, but it is nice to get these more villainous kind of inmate outfits for them. Same with Harley Quinn. We got Harley Quinn fairly recently, and she is just using the same dual molded hairpiece that she actually initially got for the LEGO Batman movie, which is one of the few components made for the LEGO Batman movie that is still kind of persisting in LEGO DC today. She has a hammer with her specialized stickered logo on it, which I think looks pretty good, and I do like the usage of the dual-sided head, one side winking and one side sticking out her tongue. I just feel like that fits the character of Harley Quinn very well. Of course, going alongside Harley, you have Poison Ivy, and Poison Ivy is brand new and designed for this set in particular. I love the recolor of the Glinda hairpiece initially made for the Wicked sets in red. I feel like that fits her character so well, and honestly, this is probably the best Poison Ivy we've ever gotten, other than the one made for the LEGO Batman movie, which honestly it's kind of hard to compare the two because that one had like dual molded arms, printing on the side of the arms, a cloth skirt and everything. So for a standard Poison Ivy like regular minifigure set, I actually think this is one of the better ones. I love the design utilizing the different shades of green there. I just feel like it works really well for the character. Moving on from that, we have our first look at Catwoman, and Catwoman is pretty detailed nicely. She doesn't have like a specialized headgear piece, which she typically does have in LEGO form, but I think this works okay for the character. You've got the printed goggles in silver and red, you also have the usage of the Black Panther horns or ears for the back of the head, and I like the accessory being like cat food, which I think works well. And also the reuse of the LEGO Marvel minifigure printed legs, which they used for characters like Black Widow, really works well for the character. Almost feels like it's designed specifically for this minifigure, which I really appreciate. Moving on from that, our next fully costumed character is Mr. Freeze. Now, the origin of this particular Mr. Freeze suit is really weird. He was like a Hot Wheel exclusive character designed for like Mr. Freeze's car and like a random DC promotional material element, and they've decided to depict this costume in LEGO form. Don't really know why they did that and chose that outfit, but honestly, I like it for what it is. I think the usage of that very conical headpiece on the front just works super well for the character, and we have gotten this version technically before in the Batman and Batmobile vs. Mr. Freeze 4+ set, which came out earlier this year, but this one adds the addition of the medium blue air tanks, which is really nice to see. Moving on from that, we have Scarecrow. Now, Scarecrow is honestly one of the more disappointing figures in the set for me. He's just using the standard jumpsuit, and they've sadly taken away his Scarecrow hat. I know he doesn't have the hat in all iterations of the character in the comics, but honestly, I feel like it's such an iconic part of the character in LEGO form, I really wish they included it in this set. However, the Riddler, on the other hand, is looking really good. They have basically made a brand new suit for him covered in the purple question marks. They've also included the bowler hat piece with a question mark on it as well. It's not the same piece we got for the LEGO Batman movie, which actually showed his hair underneath, but I think it works fine for the character, and I do like the way the mask looks too. Bane is another character that looks really good in minifig form. Despite him using the standard Arkham prison inmate suit, he does thankfully have the Bane Venom tank on the back, and he's also got barbells as an accessory, like he's lifting weights, which I think works super well, and the facial print just looks really good too. From there, we have Killer Croc making his return to minifigure form for the first time since the original LEGO Batman lineup. I think the head looks absolutely fantastic for Killer Croc. I just love the expression, the detail on it, and I feel like this is the one minifigure where it was totally fine they didn't include a body for, because you could easily just use the lizard body from Spider-Man No Way Home and have that work perfectly well for the head. So that's a great figure to get. And then finally for the villains, we have the Penguin. Penguin makes a return to having his brick-built penguin minions, which I feel like are just so classic. There's something just very iconic about those designs. They've updated them slightly to have the rounded heads, but I think it just works so well, and the design itself is pretty good. I like the usage of the fur collar. I think the facial expression on Penguin looks great as well, and it's good to get a more classic version of Penguin, especially because in the past few years we haven't really seen that minifigure pop up a ton. Finally, included in the set are a couple of Arkham Asylum guards, and they are okay. They have actually brand new torsos made for them, and I feel like you could use these in more generic kind of military police-like vibes as well if you just want to have them be patrolling Gotham City, or even Marvel minifigures. I could see them kind of using this same torso, which I think works very well for the characters, and good to get two different facial expressions in different skin tones for them. Altogether, for $300, I am actually a really big fan of this set. I feel like it accomplishes everything it wants to do. The only minor downside is that because it is a modular building, it does have a certain weight to it. It does kind of carry that title of, oh, it has to be modular with the other buildings, and it's not really that easily modular. I mean, you'll find out tomorrow when I try to integrate it into my city and watch that video, because integrating this into an actual modular street just doesn't really work that well. It doesn't have the traditional sidewalk that you would expect to see on a modular building, so you do have a piece of the wall that just kind of abruptly sticks out into the sidewalk no matter where you try to align it, and honestly, I feel like it just works almost better as its own standalone build. The only downside here is that I do agree that there are a lot of interior details here that just feel a little bit too tight to enjoy. When I was moving around and playing with the interior, I really wish that I could just get my fingers in there and just pose minifigures or even see some of the details that I put on while building, but unfortunately, because of the nature of how it's built as a modular, it really just doesn't have that much space on the interior. That being said, at the $300 price point, I genuinely think they did the best they could. I feel like they made this as good of a set as they could have done. With $300, under 3,000 pieces, I'm actually pretty happy with the value here. All the minifigures, the detail, the aesthetics of the building, I think this looks absolutely fantastic. So I'm a big fan of it. I actually like it a lot better than last year's X-Men X-Mansion, which honestly surprises me. I felt like that one was so cramped on the inside for really no reason, whereas this one kind of makes sense given the price point. So altogether, I am happy with it. I certainly hope we get more DC modulars. I hope this does well so we would get it in the future, but that's all for this early review. Let me know in the comments what you think of Arkham Asylum. Do you think it's worth it yourself? And thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming away very soon, and bye for now.